Okay, I am back again, this time with the Kronos V2, and I have a little update. This time, yeah, I took it out and I kind of went ham on it, bent the little crappy Dementor wheelie bar and just bent it right back with a wrench. But, yeah, maybe I need to do something about that later on. That one wheel design does seem to be pretty decent, and the metal they use on this, I mean, you can almost bend it with your hand. But that's not about that's not what this video is about. Big tongue. Okay, so chassis brace, well, tower to tower. Yeah, it's a simple thing, very simple, and yet it completely works. No flex. And yeah, that's the armor Creighton brace. So yeah, so I took the Creighton brace and took some 5mm, well, M5 hem jointed rod ends, 5mm tool steel rod in the front, and 5mm, I think that's like a M5 by 30, 12.9 hex bolt. Screwed it right into the front and rear chassis braces. Now, yeah, that's pretty eloquent in simplicity right there. I mean, I did use the rivet nuts as spacers in the back to try to keep the brace itself straight, so it don't want to travel and whatnot, and all the movement, clattering that it would do without any spacers in there. I couldn't deal with all of that. So yeah, I mean, it's simple in the front. I just drilled a 5mm hole in the actual hole for the carbon fiber plate that goes in there. I just drilled a 5mm hole in the top hole. Just drilled it out to 5mm and put the bolt in, bolted it right in there. As for the rear, yeah, there's well, what is this rock? A linear movement 5mm rod. Yeah, they do come in 5mm. It's just hard to find. And yeah, I used these as, well, I used them as a spool rod for a few of my custom cars that I used to have. Well, still have. I never really get rid of any of my cars. But I use those as spools. And if they work as spools, then they can pretty much handle anything. So yeah, I cut it to fit the rear. And yeah, this is the same too. I mean, it's a hole here and here for another carbon fiber bracket that I never really bothered to think about. But there's a hole here and there, and I just drilled out the top hole to 5mm, plugged the rod in there, spaced it all nice and comfy with the rivet nuts and washer, you know, just some rinky-dink washer you can get at Menards. Same for the washers that's in here, making the space for the rod in front and rear. I got 2 in the front. I got 3 in the front, 2 in the rear, with the Creighton brace. As for, let's see, oh yeah, the stops on this, that's a special part. That's a 5mm landing gear stop. Yeah, a 5mm landing gear stop. That's ridiculous, isn't it? The stuff that I use for some of this. I mean, why would I have a 5mm landing gear stop for an RC plane? Obviously, I might have a pretty big plane lying around here somewhere if it uses 5mm stops. But yeah, they wrote great for this little setup. So yeah, I use those on my Creighton too with the same tool steel. Well, they're made out of tool steel, but they're linear movement rods, and they're a heck of a lot stronger than that silly putty rod that the brace for the Creighton rod. I mean, I done bent that thing to hell and back. So I use these on it, and yeah, no more of that. Okay, so yeah, and no flex, none. Seriously, I mean, tower to tower brace, and it's not actually a tower to tower brace. I mean, it's braced into the tower, but I really didn't like the way the armor brace was set up, because it's braced into the diff cases, and well, when you keep on taking hits, it'll end up destroying your diff case. Now, there's hot racing upgrades for the diff cases, but there's nothing for this truck right now. And the way that this thing is set up with the bracing in the rear and the front, you can easily land a couple of times and pull the back end of the chassis right out of the diff case, just like the armor trucks. Brace or no brace. So this brace actually does take some force off, especially off the front. It'll possibly keep this little tab from breaking, possibly, since most of the bracing right here is triangulated into the front tower. Now that might put a little bit more strain on this area, but it's a heck of a lot better than being right here. And this isn't going to be it anyway, so yeah. As for the rear, yeah, there's a lot more reinforcement going on in this area, so most of the force is going to be taken out of this little joint right here that bolts straight to the diff case, and be transferred into this area with the bracketing. So that might save your the diff case. Might. I mean, it's forces involved. I mean, and it's plastic parts. You don't know what can happen when you're taking a bad landing or whatnot. Vertical and horizontal, even other linear forces involved. When something is slamming into the ground, you don't know where the forces is really going, and points of impact and whatnot. It's all in RC. It really is. I mean, when you have something like this that's constantly crashing into the ground, forces is coming up, they're going to take the path of least resistance, regardless of how many braces you have on there or not. So the stronger the brace is, the more forces it can take, or rather redirect into another area of the truck. Because if you have all your forces coming into the diff case, and it's coming up and it's hitting the brace and it's coming back down, and it's going to go right back into the diff case. So you do that enough times and your diff case is just going to be smashed to bits. But we learned that enough with the armor trucks, and that's why we got all the Vitavan and hot racing stuff for them. Maybe this truck can get some of that treatment, because it definitely needs it. I mean, seriously, it needs all the help it can get. I mean, the new stuff that's on here is nice and beefy, but it's still plastic, and plastic will still break. Period. End of story. So at least I got a brace on it now, and I still have to put the fans on it. Yeah, but I went with the simple I went with the simplistic approach this time. So enough rambling on. Sometimes the simple stuff is the hardest crap to do because it still has to work. So hopefully this will actually work. I mean, it's no flex. So now the brace itself, of course it flexes. I mean, it's the silly armor a EXB brace. I mean, it's gonna flex even with the steel rod ends. It's gonna flex. So I can put a carbon fiber tube over that and eliminate some of that flex. I mean, maybe about half of it, but that's still better than having the stock tube on there. So I'll go on and do that and then get to beating this thing again.